Welcome to the lawyerfair.co.uk daily podcast. Lawyerfair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
Hello, welcome to the Lawyer Fair Daily Podcast. Andrew Weaver here, the CEO of lawyerfair.co.uk. And today I'm joined by Toby Unwin, Chief Innovation Officer at Premonition, who is talking to me from the sunny shores of Florida. Welcome, Toby.
Thanks very much, Andrew. It's good to be here.
Yeah, nice to speak to you, and thanks for joining us. Now then, this is a fascinating conversation because Toby, as I say, Chief Innovation Officer at Premonition. Premonition, Toby's going to go into far more detail than I can provide you with. Essentially, use big data to break open the opaque nature of legal services, and certainly litigation services, to try and drill down to actually who is good and bad in court. And as I say, Toby will wrap this up in a far more better way than me. But what I found intriguing, Toby, was when I was doing a little research on what you do. There's a wonderful article in Law Gazette, I think it was on the 30th of July by Chloe Smith. And an article about you and about some of the results that you've been generating in the UK as well as the US. And of course, the thread that follows is a wonderful scuffle between a member of your team in the UK and a bunch of lawyers who are rather unhappy with what Premonition is doing. So on that basis, I'm going to sit back and just allow you to explain a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we say that's cows grumbling about McDonalds. But every time you're doing something new, there's always some people that don't like it. And there's an awful lot of people that think that picking a barrister by the fact that they have just the right amount of grey hair or steely gravitas is actually more important than whether they win or lose. And just this fact that lawyer win rates have never been tracked until this date is really quite an indictment of the law industry as a whole, that they keep perfect records of how much you owe them at any one moment in time. But if you ask a barrister, what's your win rate before this judge, they'll look at you quite blankly.
So you're, I like it very much. I like it, and so Premonition is smashing through this traditional, rather opaque nature. How does it work? What's the background to it?
Well, basically, the background is data. So we have various technologies that pull data from public records, and as a result of that, we've been able to amass the largest database of litigation on the planet. We believe that it's bigger than every major litigation database combined. And we have various AI that we've trained to read cases. So it'll go through, plow through the case at breakneck speed, figure out who won, who lost, and if there isn't a clear winner or loser, then it doesn't flag it either way. And it does that thousands of times a day. In fact, in the States, this will blow your mind, in the UK, we deal with just under 4,000 cases a year in the High Court. But in America, we deal with 41,000 cases every day. So data-wise, the UK is a rounding error for us. And we're able to plow through it in a very short period of time. And once all these cases are read, of course, it's fairly easy to tabulate and figure out who the winners and losers are for various courts and judges and things like that.
Now, the pushback from the traditional lawyer is going to be one that instinctively I have some sympathy with, and that's the fact that some of the good quality lawyers don't allow cases to get to the point of litigation, and that their ability to get the right result for their clients is being lost within the data that you're generating. And also, I suppose there's the other argument about there might be certain lawyers that take on harder cases, and therefore they're statistically in trouble based on Premonition. I mean, how would you deal with both of those arguments?
The first one is more UK specific, because obviously, that's a very, very accurate statement. Obviously, we can't measure what we can't see. If a case settled before it went to trial, well, in the UK, we're only looking at trials, so we're not going to know that. But on the other hand, if you have to pick a barrister, do you want one that wins all the time or one that loses all the time or is picked for the fact that they have nice chambers or is reputed to be good? It's better to get someone that's actually good. Case difficulty is a wholly different matter. Obviously, on an individual basis, you can get a very difficult case that is practically unwinnable, and it doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to win this. Whereas if the odds of someone getting a difficult, unwinnable case 40 times out of 40 are pretty slim. And also in the states where you don't have the cab rank rule, then you're going to hope that some people are going to have some selectivity of what they take on and not to take on frivolous litigation. So the big argument is that on a case-by-case level, of course, case difficulty comes into it. But when you deal with 41,000 cases a day like we do, it kind of gets evened out.
I can see that. I also saw, I think it was a chat you had with, an online chat you had with Above the Law, where I saw a really interesting graph where you'd broken down the UK Court of Appeals. I think it was QC's, the data. And it was, I think there were 4 or 5 categories. And there were other sharp comment within that said proven losers are continually rehired. I mean, if people are taking Premonition on face value and saying, well, this is absolutely the stuff I need to make my decision, those proven losers are not going to be hired for very much longer. That's
right. I would imagine that they'll find work off in the lower courts because, I mean, it's going to be difficult for some people. But on the other hand, there are some very, very good barristers in many of these courts that are practically ignored. And some of those people I see as really getting quite expensive and being able to raise their rates because they can actually justify it. And the problem is the UK, the main reason for a barrister not getting rehired is mainly because they don't get on with the solicitor. So what that leads to is a kind of hire your mates policy. And because it's a hire your mates policy, no one keeps track of winners and losers, at least not up until we did our report in the end of July, it actually winds up with a system that's totally broken, where the law firm's barrister choice is actually worse than random. It's 38% worse than random. And then there's a slightly less of a hire your mates thing between general counsel and the firms they hire. So general counsel's choice of law firm is actually 18% worse than random. We like to talk about Premonition in the big picture as being a perception reality arbitrage company.
Can you see, I mean, this may already be happening, Toby. I'm just thinking aloud here about, can you see a situation where you've got a firm that has a mixed bag of litigators in it? And your data is able to highlight, perhaps to the managing partner or perhaps to the individual litigators, the ones that you should and shouldn't be instructing. And I know myself that there are certain large firms, and I know characters in those firms, where they wouldn't instruct some of their colleagues, such as their view of some of the talents. Does Premonition, or is it already, or will it allow people to actually drill down into individual partners within the firm?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you look on our website, which is premonition.ai for artificial intelligence, and if you click on litigation, and then I think it's panel selection, you can see the results of the busiest law firm in Miami. And you'll see that the partners in this firm their performance is essentially random. You've got one guy that wins all the time, you've got another guy who loses all the time, one guy's lost 17 out of 18 times, one guy's lost 28 out of 29 times. But having said that, they have a few other good people as well. So there will be people who will say, well, I will never leave my law firm because the managing partner takes me golfing in Bermuda each winter. Fine. So stay with your firm, but pick a panel from within the firm. Pick the 3 best people and let the other people work on someone else's case.
Yes. Well, listen, we're going to wrap this up soon because you've been extremely kind to give me the time. But one thought that just crossed my mind actually was I suspect the Ashley Madison fallout is going to be, fantastic for the divorce lawyers in the land. I wonder whether your service has created spin-out firms. Has it created niche firms? Do you know of any evidence where 2 or 3 high flyers within the firm have seen the data and said, actually, what the hell are we doing bringing along these bunch of Charlies?
We haven't seen evidence of that yet, but we believe that is only a matter of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, listen, I also love your quote. I mean, you and I think, both are very keen on legal tech and what's going to happen with the market. The ability for legal consumers essentially to base their evaluation and purchase on more than just a mate's recommendation is very much singing from a similar hymn sheet. And I love your comment on 1,000. The market will become 1,000, or firms will become 1,000 folding chairs and not a big bench, which is a wonderful quote about the future of law firms.
Yes, and I believe that in the future, and when I say that, I'm talking about 6 years' time, that most lawyers will be hired via some kind of online platform. And you're already seeing this with things like Elance and Updesk, and LegalZoom has something, and Avo will probably do something, I would imagine. And there'll be stacks and stacks of these platforms. We'll probably do one, and I would imagine LexisNexis, Westlaw, those people would do one too. And then there'll be firms doing a platform. So you'll see a kind of big law firm quote unquote platform. Of course, it won't really be a good platform because you'll only be able to hire their staff with it, because they just will totally get that wrong. But there'll be a number of competing platforms. And I think the first ones that have price and performance transparency, so you can actually see how good someone is, how long his cases take, how much money it's going to cost. And the first people to do that are going to pretty much own law. We see we're in a strong position for that because essentially we're the sole source right now of performance data for attorneys. So that's a very valuable thing that other companies are looking to build into their products. And then going beyond that, I think that the first of those companies that has a compensation model that aligns client and counsel interest, which the hourly rate woefully fails to do, is going to own law. It won't be just a little bit of the market, it will be practically all of it. So that's where I see things going in the future.
Well, that's really interesting. And the final point I've got to make, which is very much aligned to that, really, is my mantra with all of this is, can we create a culture where you can get ROI on your legal fees? It's the one item on a company's P&L that is often, uncertain. They can't really pin down an ROI on that expense, whereas everything else generally you can. And it's because it's such an opaque market. It's so difficult to measure. And it would be nice to be able to see a bunch of lawyer profiles and have some idea of what the potential ROI is from them, or historically has been from them.
Yeah, I think the first part of that, really, everything stems from transparency and being able to actually get numbers. In fact, we're working on a product right now. It's kind of like a legal audit where we'd estimate the likelihood of a case winning or losing, which on an individual basis we can't do with much accuracy, but at scale we are very accurate at. And then multiplying that by expected loss data from some of the loss aggregator providers. And as a result of that, can show a pool of litigation and what the likely costs are likely to be.
Toby, sorry, I thought you were carrying on there, but that's a magnificent way to end, I have to say, a conclusion to end on what is coming through in the future. Listen, thank you for joining us on this Friday afternoon. It's very kind of you. The website again is premonition.ai. You are expanding all over the place. You're already in the UK, but is there a UK website, or is it just the one AI website?
It's the one AI website, and you'll see there's a lot of US stuff, but there's some UK stuff on there as well. And then we also have a ton of free reports which you can download. So if you click on publications, we have the study we did of the UK High Court's biggest legal study in the UK ever. Very controversial, so worth reading. And a few other bits and pieces up there that I think you'd like.
Great stuff. And the Twitter feed I'm looking at now is at Premonition Law. Toby, thanks again.
Thank you, Andrew.
All the best. That was the Lawyerfare Daily Podcast. There'll be more again next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the lawyerfare.co.uk daily podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes, or visit us on the lawyerfare.co.uk website.